The Duat trembled as Anubis, jackal-headed and star-crowned, struck a deal with the Shadow Realm. In Pharaoh Seti I's reign, the Nile turned black with drowned souls, and the desert winds howled with the damned. But ancient texts reveal Anubis was once mortal, who bargained with Duat's rulers to become its guardian. Clad in black linen, his obsidian eyes gleaming, Anubis stood at the underworld's threshold, guiding souls until a mortal's sin shattered the Duat's balance. Buried beneath papyri and tombs lies a truth that could unravel the afterlife's eternal order. "Anubis, you have failed us!" boomed Osiris, his voice echoing through the hall of Ma'at, where the sky was painted with the colors of judgment. The scales are unbalanced and the Duat bleeds. The Hall of Ma'at was a place of impossible contradictions. Its walls shimmered with the breath of the living, its floor was a mirror of the stars, and its ceiling held the faces of gods who had long since forgotten their names. Beneath the desert sands of ancient Egypt, the Duat pulsed with obsidian rivers and the screams of souls trapped between life and oblivion, where Anubis wielded the scales of Ma'at with divine precision. The realm was a labyrinth of shifting sands and eternal twilight, guarded by jackals who howled at the moon, their eyes glowing like embers in the dark. Here, the dead did not rest, but wandered through a landscape of fire and shadow, their souls weighed against the feather of Ma'at in the Hall of Judgment, where the sky was painted with the colors of judgment and the air was thick with the scent of myrrh and decay. The Hall of Ma'at stood at the heart of the Duat, its walls shimmering with the breath of the living, its floor a mirror of the stars, and its ceiling a tapestry of constellations woven by the hands of the gods. Within its vast chamber, the 42 assessors, judges of the dead, sat upon thrones of black basalt, their faces hidden behind masks of gold and lapis lazuli. At the center of the hall, the scales of Ma'at hovered, their balance a fragile thread between justice and chaos, while Osiris, his alabaster face etched with the wisdom of millennia, watched in silence. Souls arrived at the Hall of Ma'at through the gates of Duat, their journey guided by Anubis, whose black linen robes billowed like the desert wind. Each soul carried the Book of the Dead, its pages inscribed with spells to navigate the perils of the underworld, the lake of fire, the serpents of darkness, and the mounds of the dead. Those who faltered were devoured by Ammit, the beast with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the tail of a hippopotamus, her roar shaking the foundations of the Duat. Yet the Duat was not a realm of endless punishment. The sky split open as Anubis, jackal-headed and crowned with stars, struck a deal with the Shadow Realm that would fracture the Duat's eternal balance. This was no mere betrayal, it was a cosmic rupture that threatened to unravel the very fabric of the afterlife, where the dead were judged and the living were bound by the weight of their deeds. But the ancient texts whisper of a secret. Anubis, god of death, was once a mortal who bargained with the Duat's rulers to become its guardian, a truth buried beneath layers of sacred papyrus and forgotten tombs. In the time of Pharaoh Seti I, when the Nile ran black with the blood of the drowned and the desert winds carried the cries of the damned, the Duat was a realm of shifting sands and eternal twilight, guarded by jackals who howled at the moon. Anubis, with his black linen robes and eyes like polished obsidian, stood at the threshold of the underworld, his role not to punish, but to guide souls to their rightful place, until the day the scales of Ma'at trembled under a mortal's sin. "Anubis, you have failed us," boomed Osiris, his voice echoing through the Hall of Ma'at, where the sky was painted with the colors of judgment. The scales are unbalanced, and the Duat bleeds. The Hall of Ma'at was a place of impossible contradictions. Its walls shimmered with the breath of the living, its floor was a mirror of the stars, and its ceiling held the faces of gods who had long since forgotten their names. "I did not fail," Anubis replied, his voice low and resonant like the tolling of a funeral bell. "It was the thief, Neferhotep, who sought to steal the Eye of Ra, a relic of such power that it could unmake the Duat itself. The hall of Ma'at trembled as Osiris raised his arms, the alabaster of his face glowing with the light of 1,000 suns. Before him stood the scales of judgment, their arms of gold and lapis lazuli swaying in the unseen wind, their pans empty save for the shadow of Anubis's soul. "You have broken the Duat's law," Osiris thundered, his voice a storm of stone and thunder. "The scales of Ma'at must weigh not only the hearts of mortals, but the hearts of gods. Will you face this trial, Anubis, or will the Duat fall into chaos?" The air thickened with the scent of myrrh and incense, the walls of the Hall of Ma'at shifting like mirages. The floor, a mosaic of black and white stones, reflected the faces of the dead, some weeping, others grinning as if privy to a secret the living could never know. "I will face it," Anubis said. His jackal head bowed, his black linen robes whispering like the wind of the desert. "But know this, Osiris. The scales cannot judge a god who has made a pact with the shadow realm. My heart is not mine alone, it is the Duat's burden." Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, stepped forward, his scribe's reed in hand. His eyes, sharp as a falcon's, gleamed with the cold light of truth. "Then let the scales decide," he said, his voice slicing through the silence. "Place your heart upon the scale, Anubis. Let the feather of Ma'at judge you. You dare." Anubis's voice was a low growl, the sound of a jackal at the edge of the desert. The feather of Ma'at was never meant to weigh the hearts of gods. It was meant to measure the worth of mortals, not the sins of deities. The Hall of Ma'at fell silent. The stars above the ceiling dimmed as if the cosmos itself held its breath. As Anubis's soul was consumed by the Duat's shadows, the scales of Ma'at trembled, and the Duat's balance was restored, the realm of the dead once again, a place of judgment and transformation. "The Duat is safe," Osiris said, his voice echoing through the halls of the afterlife. But the lesson of Anubis's sacrifice will echo through the ages, a warning to all who seek power without understanding its cost. The stars above the desert blinked in time with the heartbeat of the Duat, now whole again, its obsidian rivers flowing with the light of the sun rather than the darkness of forgotten sins. The jackals that once howled in unison fell silent, their watchful eyes now reflecting the harmony of the afterlife. "Anubis's name will be whispered in the temples of the living," said Thoth, his ibis head bowing as he traced the symbols of Ma'at into the air. Not as a god of death, but as a guardian who saw the weight of his own soul and chose to bear it. The pyramids of Giza, where the Eye of Ra had been hidden, now stood as monuments to the eternal balance between life and death. Their white limestone surfaces gleamed under the desert sun, etched with the warning Anubis had left behind. To guard the dead, one must first master the fear of dying.